Bruce wasn't doing well at all. His vitals were off. He was in respiratory distress. Like, his heart is failing. I did not know if Bruce was going to make it. He could die any second. One of our other cats, Richard, had recently been diagnosed with a heart disease. So on February 20th, I texted my boyfriend and I asked him what the name of the heart disease was. But little did I know that Bruce, who was sleeping next to me, was moments away from dying from that very same disease if he didn't get medical intervention. At the time, I was actually supposed to be packing because we were going to Florida the next day very early in the morning, but instead I got stuck editing this YouTube video, the previous one I uploaded. And if you've seen it, you know that the whole point of the video is me talking about how Richard and Ahmed have these newly diagnosed conditions, but Bruce was doing fine. Little did I know that he was the one who would end up at an emergency clinic before the end of the night. In hindsight, the first sign was decreased appetite. The night before, I had given Bruce a squeeze treat, you know, like those tube treats. And usually he goes bonkers for that. But this time, he kind of just ate it like a normal cat, if that makes sense. Like, he was so polite about it, just licking it. And I figured maybe he's just not that hungry. He didn't eat all of his lunch the next day, the day it all happened. He ate like half of it, which was unlike him. But I had recently switched to a new type of wet food, so I figured that maybe the new food was making him nauseous. So for dinner, I gave him some kibble, dry food, which I tried to avoid giving him that, but he just loves it so much. And he ate all of that just like normal. But then I did notice that he was breathing kind of funny. The best way I could describe it is it looked like he was sniffing. And I figured that's just what it was, so I didn't think too much about it until an hour or two later when my boyfriend came home and we were having dinner. And my boyfriend just happens to be a veterinarian. Bruce was sitting next to me, next to my chair, and I noticed again that he was breathing weird. So I told my boyfriend, I was like, hey, isn't Bruce kind of breathing funny? He got down on the floor, seemed super concerned, and I was like, no, it's fine, you can eat your dinner first, you don't have to look at him now. But he was actually really worried. We ended up going back to his work to pick up a stethoscope. He came back home and listened to Bruce's heart and lungs. And I thought he would just be like, no, he's fine. But instead he said, it doesn't sound good at all. We got Bruce into a carrier and drove him to my boyfriend's clinic. And that's not an emergency clinic, and they're only open during regular business hours. So at this point it was closed. No one else was there. It was just me, my boyfriend, Bruce, and my son. We took x-rays of Bruce. And then me, my son, and Bruce went into an office and waited while my boyfriend looked at the x-rays, and he also consulted with his vet friends. At this point, I could tell something was terribly wrong with Bruce because he was just sitting there in my lap. Like, that's just so unlike him. And normally I think he would have jumped down and like started to explore the room or so. After a while, which actually seemed like forever, my boyfriend came back and he said that he and the other vets that he had consulted with suspected that he has congestive heart failure. All I hear then, because I didn't know anything about heart failure at the time, is heart and failure, like his heart is failing, like he's dying. We decided to bring Bruce to an emergency clinic, and I luckily don't have any experience with emergency clinics, but all I knew is they're really backlogged and people have to wait for hours. But I guess this was more during the pandemic, and luckily it's gotten better now. So when we got there was only one other person in the waiting room. And when they heard that Bruce was in respiratory distress, they paged the people in the back and they were like, you need to come right now. They brought Bruce into the back right away, and a couple of minutes later, one of the staff members came out and told us that Bruce wasn't doing well at all. His vitals were off, he was in respiratory distress, and it kind of seemed like he could die any second. And she had us sign this form, a consent form, about whether we wanted them to perform CPR and pay for CPR if the worst were to happen, which we said was fine. So I had been fairly calm up until this point, and I don't know how bad it actually was, but she did make it seem, or at least I interpreted it as being really, really bad. So then waiting just in the waiting room after this was, it was horrible, because at that point I did not know if Bruce was going to make it. After a while, we got to go into an exam room. Bruce was not there though, he was still in the back. And we talked to a vet, and she also suspected congestive heart failure, but she said it could potentially be something worse. She really made it seem like heart failure was the best case scenario. And they were going to keep him overnight, at least overnight. They had him in an oxygen chamber. They were going to do x-rays overnight, and then in the morning, they were gonna do an echocardiogram. And we were welcome to go and see him before we left for the night. They estimated that the treatment would be between $4,000 and $6,000. So it was like the mid-range of that we had to pay them before leaving him there. We went to the back and saw Bruce in the oxygen chamber, and I will say, I mean, he was definitely not in a good condition, but I could tell his fighting spirit was there, and my gut told me that I would get to see him again, even though I'm not gonna lie, I was really, really worried. And then we went home, and yeah, I did not get much sleep that night, that's for sure, because I was still just so worried, like so worried. My worst nightmare was that he would not come home again. They called us around 3 a.m. After they had done the x-rays. They had sent them out, the x-rays, to a radiologist, so like a specialist, but the radiologist hadn't reviewed it yet, but they said based on what they could see on the x-rays, it seemed like it was congestive heart failure, so they had already started him on the meds for that. The next morning, they did give us some updates. So Bruce was doing better. He still had labored breathing, but overall was more stable than the night before. And we went to visit him again around lunchtime. I will say their visiting hours were very generous. We could pretty much go and visit him at any time. While we were walking in there, they actually called us, the vet called us with an update, or I should say they called my boyfriend because I let him just handle all the medical stuff. They called with the results of the echocardiogram, and that confirmed that Bruce has the same disease as Richard. I'm just gonna call it HCM because I cannot pronounce this word. But anyways, and that it was another word I can't pronounce, this word. It was not something we did, like we couldn't really have prevented this. And then we got to see Bruce, and I've never seen him so happy before. I didn't record it right when I walked up there. I do have a video from like a couple of minutes later, but like when I first got there, oh my god, he was so happy. He was trying to climb out of this hole. He was still in an oxygen chamber. He was like trying to climb out of the hole to get to me. He was so happy, and he was like purring. He just wanted me to rub his head. So that felt good, just seeing like that he was so happy, and he was still still had some energy left in him. They wanted to keep Bruce for another night because they were going to wean him off the oxygen. So they're going to slowly decrease it overnight so that he was completely off it by the morning. Because of that, we went back to visit him later that night, and this time he was much more tired. Like he was not as happy. He was happy to see me, but not as happy as he was earlier in the day. And I'm not gonna lie, it did make me a little bit concerned seeing that, but it kind of made sense too, that it had been a long day. He wasn't really able to sleep that well, I bet. It did make me really worried knowing I was gonna leave him again and I didn't get to bring him home. It's purring. I can't hear him, but I can feel him.
Take me back to an age when the world felt small. Way back before we blew it all. Take me back to a place where I felt at home. Take me back to a day when we weren't alone. Take me back to an age when the world felt small. Way back before we.
Luckily he did well overnight and they were able to take him off the oxygen. We went there around, I think it was around 1 to pick him up. We went into an exam room. Here's my son doing a little happy dance. And then waited for them to bring him out there. So they brought him out in his carrier. At this point I thought he was again be like super happy, like he's going home, but all he was concerned about was grooming himself, because my guess is he had the cone on up until this point, so he's probably just like so happy to get rid of the cone and finally being able to groom himself. So that's what he was doing. He did that the whole car ride home as well. In the end, the bill from the emergency clinic ended up being about $5,400.
Welcome back home, Brucey.
And then when he did come home, for a little bit was just walking around like nothing happened, but then he went to the cat bed in my office and lay down and just stayed there the whole night, basically just sleeping, which also was concerning. But again, like, he had 2 rough days. It does make sense in hindsight, but I was a little bit worried. Like, how can you not be worried? He literally almost died. Bruce's appetite wasn't quite what it used to be the first couple of days after he came home, but other than that, he was almost acting like normal. About a week after all this happened, we brought Bruce back to my boyfriend's clinic, and they did blood work and x-rays again. The blood work looked fine. The x-rays looked much better than they did the week before. Unfortunately, a couple of days after this, Bruce got worse again, and his breathing was labored again, and this time I actually recorded a video of it. So I brought him back to my boyfriend's clinic, and he spent the day there, and they gave him Lasix via IV. And that seemed to do the trick, because he started feeling better again, and he's been doing fine ever since then. It's very difficult to detect heart disease in cats because often they won't show symptoms until it's too late. But there are a couple of things you can do. Make sure you bring your cat in for an annual exam so that your veterinarian can listen to their heart and detect whether they, for example, have a heart murmur. There's also a blood test that screens for heart disease in cats, and it's called ProBNP. It won't tell you what type of heart disease it is, so you would have to follow up with an echocardiogram, which is what we did with Richard. It might not necessarily be a heart condition, but if your cat is ever experiencing labored breathing, bring him or her to the vet as soon as possible. Looking back, there's nothing we could really have done differently with Bruce. He had a dental cleaning done about 3 months before all of this happened, which obviously also included an exam and blood work. He even had a ProBNP test done, and everything came back fine. So in a way, we did everything you're supposed to do, and nothing indicated that anything was wrong with his heart. Bruce is currently on 2 medications for the heart failure. One is furosemide that prevents fluid from building up in his lungs, and the other one is clopidogrel that prevents blood clots. The clopidogrel is very bitter tasting, so unfortunately with that one, the best way to give it is to pill him. It does make it a little bit easier if we put it in a gel capsule first. The furosemide we give as a liquid. We had it compounded, so it tastes like chicken and marshmallow. So I just squirt it in his mouth and then I give him a couple of treats, and this actually works pretty well. As you might remember, we were supposed to go to Florida when all of this happened, but we ended up canceling that trip. As much as that sucks, I'm still grateful that this happened before we left, because there's no way I would have been able to forgive myself if Bruce got sick when we were in another state. I've not been given an official prognosis for Bruce in terms of life expectancy, and to be honest, I'm not sure I want to know because it can be so inaccurate. From what I read online, the average is about 6 to 12 months, but I've also heard a lot of success stories of cats living with congestive heart failure for years. As much as I want to be optimistic, I also have to be realistic. Bruce is an older cat. I don't know exactly how old he is. He officially turns 12 this summer, but he used to be a stray cat, so we don't know exactly how old he is. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's closer to 15 years. He's had a pretty rough life. I mean, you can just look at him and tell. So his body has already been through a lot. In addition to all of this, he also has FIV, feline immunodeficiency virus, and I don't know exactly how that affects the heart failure. We're just taking one day at a time, and right now he's doing really well. He's eating, playing, following Richard along in the backyard, napping in his favorite chair, all of the good stuff. I don't know what the future holds, and I don't take tomorrow for granted, but I hope he gets another summer outside in the sun. I just want his last days to be his best days.
Brucey!